All right, welcome everybody. We will go ahead and get started. Welcome to our Missouri Open Door Technology mod for March. Today's topic is the ABCs and 1, 2, 3s of augmentative and alternative communication. My name is Angelina Alpert. I am a research assistant at University of Missouri, Kansas City Institute for Human Development. And today's objectives are a couple announcements, an overview of Missouri No Wrong Door, alternative ways to plan and explore, and learn about AAC options. For those of you that are joining us for the first time today, our mods do get recorded and sent out in an email afterwards, as well as getting posted to the Charting the Life course YouTube channel. So, Charting the Life course is hosting their 9th annual showcase that is April 29th through May 1st in Kansas City, Missouri. We are doing a couple of things technology focused this year. David Baker from Missouri Assistive Technology and I will be doing a joint presentation on the pathways to technology solutions. And then if any of you attended the showcase last year, we will be doing the spotlight room again with the assistive technology, where you'll have an opportunity to walk around and see a lot of different devices. And there is a registration there that I will drop in the chat once I switch it over to Kara. So a little bit about No Wrong Door, if you're unfamiliar, it aims to transform the way people access services in the community. So it supports individuals and caregivers to make decisions on complete and accurate information about their options for anyone seeking long-term services and supports, regardless of age, income, or disability. We have a lot of partners as a part of Missouri No Wrong Door, one of those being Missouri Assistive Technology, and they host this series with us. So for the Open Door series, those open doors to integrated supports. So we have the technology series, which you're at today. And then we also have the benefit series, which is typically the second Wednesday of every month from 12:30 to 1:30. And those focus on eligibility specific supports, whether they're needs-based services based on age, income, a specific disability diagnosis. And the goal of integrating services in support systems is that sometimes when a person is using only those formal government services, it can unintentionally seclude them from the family and the community that they want to be a part of. So our goal is to use those 5 different types of services and supports and integrate them into a person's life so that they're able to live with the family and community of their choosing. So today I wanted to talk a little bit about alternative ways to use Charting the Life course for planning and exploring. So a little bit about Charting the Life course. It is a framework and set of tools to help you think differently about your vision of a good life, set high expectations, and integrate multiple types of supports. It also helps you organize your ideas, visions, and goals, as well as problem solve, navigate, and advocate for supports. So if you're familiar with our tools, they typically look like this. This is just a couple examples. The one on the left-hand side of the screen is the trajectory. So in the top box, you will have your vision for what you want in life. In the bottom box, you'll have what you don't want. And then above the line, you're going to put things that are going to help you achieve your vision. And below the line, you're going to put things that take you away from your vision. We also have the integrated support star, which this is a place to just kind of keep track of all the supports and services that you have, whether they be personal strengths and assets, relationships, eligibility specific, community based, or technology. Another one that we have is the Life Vision tool, which this one goes through each of the domains: daily life and employment, community living, social and spirituality, advocacy and engagement, healthy living, safety and security, and then also adds supports for family and supports and services. Um, and this is just a place to write your vision for the future and prioritize which domain it is that you are wanting to focus on at any given time. But the tools don't always have to be filled out as they are. The tools are meant to be more of a communication tool. And so people do these tools in a lot of different ways. So I just wanted to kind of talk about some of the different options as we're talking about different communication types today. So as you can see in some of the examples here, um, people will either put pictures of, things like what they want to be when they grow up, or draw pictures of what they want to be when they grow up. Eli wants to be a mailman, so that's what he drew here on his sheet. For the strengths and assets part of the star, this person went ahead and made a crown and put all of the things that describes their strengths on it. Here they are like acting out what they want as their living situation. So they're making a house with their arms. In this one here, this young man made a video about his what he wants in life. That way he's able to play it back over and over again and have those things recorded. Again, these are just some more drawings of what they want. And then here was a scrapbooking session for vision tools. So there was a bunch of magazines and pictures that everyone was able to cut up, and then they were able to make their vision with those pictures. And then in another one, so this is a trajectory, but it's broken apart into what's important to me, my life goals, and what bothers me. And if you've ever been to a Charting a Life course presentation before, you're probably familiar with Ben. So this is Ben's trajectory, and he scrapbooked for his, so collected a bunch of pictures of him and his family, of things that were important to him and his goals, and things that bother him. So just important to know that, when using the tools like this, you can make it work for any communication style, and it doesn't have to fit one specific type. And with that, I will go ahead and pass it over to Kara.
All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Kara with Missouri Assistive Technology. So as Angelina said, I'm going to talk about the ABCs and 1, 2, 3s of AAC. This is just going to be kind of a brief overview of AAC. There's a lot that goes into it. We're talking about, an entire communication system here. So I'm going to spend some time talking about some of the different levels of AAC, some devices. I'll talk about some implementation ideas, and then I'll just talk about some things to consider too whenever you're working with an AAC user or finding an AAC device. So on this first slide, I just wanted to take a minute to talk about some of these. So the first one, it's just a texting conversation. Looks like they're making a dinner reservation. The top right one, she's got her hand up. It looks like she's probably waving, saying hi. Um, the bottom left one, a baby, she's kind of making, like a scrunched up face. There's a lemon there. You can tell that either, she's probably not liking it. It's too sour for her. You can tell by that facial expression. And then the bottom right one, so the guy, he's got his hands almost over his ears. He looks like he's shouting. Um, so you can tell from his body language that he's either very frustrated, something's too loud for him. But you can tell that either way, he's not happy. Angelina, you can go to the next slide. Thank you. So this is just, I wanted to keep in mind this multimodal communication. So all forms of communication. We're going to talk a lot about AAC today, but there are a lot of other ways to communicate. You know, we communicate with our body language, with our facial expressions, with gestures, texting, pictures. There are multiple ways that we can communicate. Um, so keep this in mind as we talk about AAC, because all of us use multiple different ways to communicate. We don't just use verbal. Same with an AAC user. They're not going to just use their AAC device. The ultimate goal is effective communication, not necessarily that they are using their AAC device. So effective communication with or without their device. And whenever I say effective communication, I mean, can an unfamiliar person understand what the individual is trying to communicate? So it's great, a lot of times moms especially, they say, oh, I know what they need. I know what they're trying to say. And then they'll just get it for them. Same with, like therapists and teachers that work a lot with that individual. They understand them more because they are around them more. But we do, if a substitute comes in or if they're in a situation where that they have unfamiliar people around them, we want them to also be able to communicate effectively so other people can understand. All right, so this goes for all assistive technology. There's different levels from no tech to high tech. So for AAC specifically, so for no tech, it a lot of times looks like just a paper, some kind of printed out version. That could be on paper, that could be on a t-shirt or a mug or a giant billboard. So there, either way, it's going to be a print option. They're very simple, very user-friendly. Something else to keep in mind with a no tech option is there's going to be no voice output. So whoever is using that option, somebody is going to have to be right there next to them, whoever they're communicating with. They will have to be right there and watching what that individual is pointing to because there is no voice output. Um, but again, it's very easy to use. You can customize it. But if you do want to change any of those icons, that's going to require, reprinting out, whatever it's on. And then there's little to no cost with that. I mean, you're talking about just printing a paper more than likely. So that doesn't cost a whole lot. With low tech, they're going to be, again, very simple and user-friendly. With all of these, you, for the most part, can customize them yourself. With low tech and mid tech, you're going to have to record them yourself for most of the devices. Low tech's pretty inexpensive. And then again, there's limited options. A lot of like low tech stuff, there's only going to be, 1 to maybe 4 or 5 buttons. So there's not a whole lot of options there. With mid tech, there's a little bit more options that you have. Again, you can customize it. That might require a little bit of prep work though. A lot of them you make your own template or you have your own printed out icons. So that does require some planning ahead of time. They can be inexpensive. I think a lot of the stuff is more expensive than what you would think, but when it comes to AAC, they're typically on the cheaper end. And there's more options, but it's still pretty limited with mid-tech. And then with high tech, that's going to give you the most options. A lot of them have pre-made vocabulary sets, so you don't have to go in and make anything yourself. You can use what's already there, but you can also customize it. It does take some time to customize it. It probably is going to require some training to learn how to use it, how to customize it. There are a lot of different options. You could spend days and weeks and months just customizing. So you kind of have to decide on a line of, what you want to customize, kind of what point you want to get to, and then, at that point, then it's like, okay, we need to actually start using the device because you could change the color of all the buttons and do different borders, and that's great, but it does take a lot of times to do that. And then with high tech, it is going to be more expensive. Okay, so for no tech, some different options that there are. So there is the Pixie Pal, that's the one in the top left. It's really just a waterproof like binder sleeve. So you can take it, to like the water park or the pool, and it's going to be totally fine. A tip, just a paper board. It could be something you print, could be something you laminate. That one in the middle, I actually bought off of Amazon. So it's like a waterproof, um, like cardstock paper. Uh, Bracelets. Again, these bracelets are from Toby Dynavox. They just have some quick and simple phrases on them. And a lanyard too that you can just wear around your neck. You can laminate it, or they have those, card sleeves that you can put on the lanyard. And then some implementation ideas for this. So with the Pixie Pal, again, you can use the Pixie Pal at the pool or the water park because it is waterproof. Talk to Me Technologies makes a lot of like holiday boards and season boards. These are really good when you don't want to add a whole nother page, to their device. Especially if they just came back, like from Christmas, and you want to talk about like what they do over Christmas break, what did they get for Christmas, and you want them to have access to those words, but they might not necessarily need those words all the time on their device, especially if they're using a smaller grid size on, maybe on their high-tech device, and you don't want to take up, any extra space on there. So, having just a themed board with some of those words for when they need access to those words, but not all the time. Police and emergency boards. Um, if you remember, we had somebody that was on a mod session, it's been quite a few months ago, and she made boards specific to police and emergency situations. Because again, if you are a non-speaking individual, but then you get into a situation where you need, a police officer, or there's an emergency, you've been in a car accident, and you can't find your device, you don't have your device with you. That's a great option. I think all police stations, police officers should keep something in their car because there are going to be situations that come up like that. Same with the doctor's office. Whenever you go to the doctor's office, the previous board, the one that I mentioned that I got on Amazon, it even has like a list of or like a picture of a body. And it talks about, it has specific words about pain and a rating scale. And it has even just like a letter board too, of somebody if they could, spell out what they were wanting. But just some words like that that they might need at the doctor's office. A lanyard with just basics, especially in a school. If you're just, walking out to the bathroom, you might not necessarily want to bring their high-tech device to the bathroom. Totally understandable. But then, the teacher could have a lanyard of just some specific, phrases that they might need. You know, I need a paper towel, I need help, um, some different things like that. They could still have access to those words. And then a bracelet with greetings, like I mentioned with the Toby Dynavox, they have some different bracelets that have some different fun phrases on them. And then the bottom picture, the one with the park and the slide, if you guys have noticed, there a lot of, parks I've noticed are implementing these communication boards at the park too. So they have phrases on them like, slide, swing, I want to go, I don't want to go. So that's a great way that kids can communicate with each other using that board. And I think I saw Scout mentioned, like with the Pixie Pal, using it for bath time too. The one button AAC devices, so these are considered low tech. So there's the Big Mac and the Little Mac. They both say just one phrase, whatever you record. Again, you're going to have to record it yourself. With the big step by step and the little step by step, they will say three phrases or words, but they'll say it in a sequence. So they'll say like duck, duck, goose, or ready, set, go. and they're just going to repeat that same sequence. The big talking bricks and then the little talking bricks, they typically when you buy them, they come in a set of three. So they can be used individually or you can connect them together. Those are a really good option because they're a little bit flatter and lighter than something like the Big Mac. So, and they're also magnetic. So you could stick it on a board or you could put a piece of Velcro on it and, stick it to the wall, stick it to a table. And they're just a lot easier to mount somewhere because they're not quite as heavy. But again, each one of those buttons will say one word or phrase, whatever you record. And then same with the Go Talk. It's just one button. Um, the Go Talk one, I actually went to a Halloween event and but there were several kids there that had AAC devices, but they didn't bring their AAC device to this event because the parents don't, want it to get lost or broken or whatever the case may be. So I went to this event and out of everything that I brought, the Go Talk one was the most popular because I just had it say trick or treat. So it just gave them the phrase so they could still, actively participate in as a trunk or treat event. Uh, and they could still actively participate, but it was just so simple because they could just press the button, say trick or treat, get their candy, and then they can move on. And so some other examples for the one buttons are a greeting or a goodbye, saying hello, saying goodbye. You can have it by the bathroom or near their desk or wherever they may be, but to say, I need to use the bathroom. An ABC song or a happy birthday song. If you know it's somebody's birthday, if you know you're going to sing happy birthday, um, pre-record a happy birthday song. So then they can still press that button and participate in that. A button just asking for help, requesting their favorite item, um, requesting more of something. So you could have it available during meal time or snack time, and then they could request more. And then telling a joke too. You can record jokes. Even with like the step by step, you could record knock knock, like a knock knock joke on there. And then there's something called it's called I think it's 101 ways to use a Big Mac. So they have a whole list of different ways you can use a one button AAC device. But again, one button, so it's just going to be one phrase that you can say. And then these are multi-button AAC devices. So again, they're still pretty low tech, very user-friendly. The iTalk 2 and the iTalk 4, so there's either 2 choices or 4 choices. So these ones do have levels on them. So you can record, I think, 3 sets of messages. So like for the iTalk 2, you can record yes, no, red, yellow, stop, go. So the only thing with that is I would, suggest putting some kind of picture on them. They all have like a clear cap, so you can cut out a picture and stick it underneath. So then if you're changing the levels and you're changing that message, put a picture with it so it doesn't confuse the person using it. The communicator for VI, that one just has a backlight. It's a very, very large device because it's meant for somebody with a visual impairment, and then it provides that backlight too, so they can better see what button they're selecting. The talkable 2, 3, and 4, again, they're just going to be that the number of buttons that it has is the number of options, that number of messages you can record. And then I included the big talking bricks and little talking bricks on this one as well because you can link them together and use them kind of in a set. And then the totally tactile communicator, that one, so that middle button is just like you just press the different levels. I can't remember, I think it might be 12 levels on that one. But each one of those, they're just different tactile buttons. There's 6 options that you can record. So that's really good for somebody also with a visual impairment because they have the different tactile buttons on them. Then some examples to use these, again, just saying yes, no. You have different, lunch options or snack options. Then they can select those different options. Talking about weather, you can have some different weather options so you can discuss what the weather is that day. Greeting phrases. So, you could say, hello, how are you? Um, I'm doing good, I'm doing bad. Giving them some different options like that. Talking about feelings. So if you are asking somebody, how are you doing today? Giving them, I'm good, I'm bad, I'm tired. Frequently requested items. Again, you can record, either single words on here or you can record phrases. So you can record a phrase like, I want coffee, I want to watch TV. Some frequently requested items that you know that they're going to ask for. And then in the classroom, some different literacy activities. So that bottom picture is using the talking bricks, and it looks like they read, there was an old lady who swallowed some leaves. So then, you can do some different activities talking about sequencing or asking WH questions and using those buttons for that. All right, so these are static display AAC devices. So, and what I mean by that is they don't have a physical button. They just kind of have like an activation area. Um, so a lot of these have like a grid that signals where that activation area is, but it's not a physical button that you press down. So that's the only difference with that. But these are considered kind of mid-tech. With a lot of these, they either come with instructions or they have instructions printed on like the back of the device. So every now and then I still have to look at the instructions to figure out how to record the buttons. But again, they're still fairly user friendly. So the 7-level communicator, that one has some different grid options. It has a 1, a 2, 4, an 8, and a 16. And then you can record some different levels on that. So that one's nice, especially if you don't know what grid size somebody needs. It does have a few different options to select from. Same with the Super Talker that's right below it. They both just come with some different grid size options. The Hip Talk Plus, that one also has some different, I think it has a 3, 6, and a 12. So that one's really good. I always think of like a work environment for that one because it can be hands-free. So, you can be doing, if you're stocking shelves or you're greeting people, you can do that hands-free, but then you have if you have greeting phrases or if you, there's some frequent phrases that you need while you're at work, you have that right there available. Same with the Go Talk Select and Go Talk Go. Those are both, they're also wearables. So the Go Talk Select, there's just 4 button options, but that's worn on the lanyard. And the Go Talk Go is 3 buttons, and then it's like a watch, so it could be worn on your wrist. And then the Quick Talker 7, 12, and 23. The grid sizes don't change with that, but they do have some different level options. And you can put some different templates in there so you can slide those in and out. Again, if you change the levels, make sure that you change the template with that. And then again, with all of these, you are going to have to record these yourselves. And some different examples to use these, just some core words. So just giving them, basic words like I need help, stop, go, where's the bathroom, I'm hungry. Basic phrases like that. For community outings, so if you're going to the zoo or the grocery store or restaurant, you might not want them to take their high-tech device. So you can take something, like a quick talker. So it's, not, it won't be the worst thing if something like that breaks. They're still expensive, but better than taking their, $6,000 device versus their $300 device. And it still gives them those words. Again, if you go to the zoo, you might not go to the zoo, you might only go once a year. So you might not want them to have all of these words taking up space on their device, but then you can still have, the words whenever you do go to the zoo. Mealtime. You could have these, in whatever, like the cafeteria that they're eating in. Just some basic phrases that they need, like I need a fork, I need a napkin. Different stations. if you have, I know in my classroom, I always had different stations that they could go to. So selecting different stations, same with book choices or song choices. You could have it, like in a library, different kinds of books that they want, or different songs that that they're going to like that they can select from. And then these are text devices. Um, so these are still mid-tech. These ones are for the most part, they're pre-recorded. So the Prox Talker, they just come with these little icons, but the icons have a chip in them, and that chip is recorded. So then put it on the device on the little Velcro and press down, and it'll speak that phrase, for you. You can record your own, but it does come with a pretty good set that's already pre-recorded. And then the Prox Pad for AAC and the Prox Pad for VI, they come again with those little chip cards, but then they also have like a physical object that is attached with that card. So that's really good for teaching vocabulary with AAC. It's good for teaching the vocabulary, and then with the one for VI, it's good for those with the visual impairment to be able to feel that object and learn what that is. And then just some different options that you could use with that. Um, again, introducing vocabulary with the Prox Talker. Like I said, it does come with a lot of options. You can take away those options though. It's just Velcro. So you could slowly introduce just a few at a time and kind of build up. They're good for sequencing. You could use it almost like a verbal visual schedule. And then it's good for making choices too and differentiating what they want. Okay, and then these are the high-tech devices. So I'm going to talk about some different high-tech devices, kind of around the companies, the big companies that we have devices from. These are definitely not all the high-tech devices out there. This goes with all the AAC. This is not everything that's out there. This is just what we have. Um, with with the high-tech devices, they all have their own, similar features. For the most part, they are a really nice tablet in a really nice case. So that's just something to keep in mind. Again, there are some different features and accessories that some of these devices come with that might be beneficial that, the user might need. But also, an iPad with a communication app might also suffice for their needs. So these are all PRC Saltillo devices. So PRC Saltillo is one of the big company that does communication devices. So they have the accent device. And with these different numbers, they're just different sizes. So the 800 is a little bit smaller than the 1000. So with the accent device, they have some different vocabulary choices, lamp being one of the most popular. And then they have a few other options too. The devices, they come with a handle and a stand. They do have key guards that are available. So I'll talk a little bit more about key guards later. Um, with the accent devices, they are considered a dedicated device. So you can do other things on it, but primarily the main focus is the communication piece to that. And it's kind of hard to get out of too. So that's just something to think about if you have somebody that does, if they're using an iPad and they are able to get out of it. I know people that have used guided access and they still have, um, their individual that they're working with still can somehow get out of guided access. Something like the accent or even the Nova Chat is a great option. Um, the Accent 1000 and 1400 with Look, that is their eye gaze option. So I'll talk a little bit more about eye gaze later too. The Nova Chat, that one is another dedicated device and it comes with touch chat on it. So again, you can only access touch chat, so you can't do anything else on there. Okay. Angela, can you go back one more? Sorry. Okay, and then the Via Pro and the Via Mini and the Versa I, those are all they're both or iOS options. So you can't, they're not dedicated. You can do other things on there. You can access other apps, you can access the internet. Um, so that's something to keep in mind with that. They do have key guards, which is why some people will kind of go towards that versus just our standard iPad. Um, I should say the Via Pro does, not the Versa I. The Versa I is eye gaze though, so um, that's another access option there. Okay, let me go to the next slide, Angelina. Okay, so these are Forbes devices. So Forbes has the Pro Slate and the Win Slate. So the Pro Slate is just their iOS-based device. Um, they don't have any kind of specific communication device for that, so any app can go on that. Um, they do have key guards with that one. Something to keep in mind with this one, they have something called a sound pod, and with the sound pod, it's just a speaker, but then you can put it on a lanyard and you can wear it around your neck. So essentially, like if a user, especially like with the wind slate, which is eye gaze, and it might be a little bit further away from them, whenever you connect that sound pod, the voice comes from that speaker, so then it sounds like it's coming from the individual. Mm. So that's one of the accessories that is pretty unique to the Forbes devices. And then again, the Winslate is eye gaze, and then they have their own. It's called like the core word language system, and they have some different games on there too. But that is their eye gaze option. And then Tobii Dynavox, they have so these first two, the TD Navio and the I-110, are just tablets. They don't have eye gaze. The TD Navio is iOS based. And all of these devices, they have TD Snap on them. That's their communication system. And then the I-110 is a Windows-based tablet. Um, the TD Pilot and the I-13 and I-16, they're all, and the PCI, they're all eye gaze. The TD Pilot is iOS-based. Again, it has TD Snap, TD Talk. The I-13 and I-16, that's a Windows-based tablet that also has eye gaze with TD Snap. And then the PCI is just a separate eye tracking bar. You can connect it to, I think, just about any computer, especially like a Windows-based tablet. And then you can have eye gaze with that. So that's can be used for communication, but it can also be used just for general computer access. And then just some other AAC devices. Like I said, these are not all that's out there. This is just what we have. So the Touch Talk by Lingraphica. Um, they also have an app, the Small Talk communication app. So that one is more designed for those have had a stroke. They do have some other vocabulary sets, but that's kind of their primary target is for older, individuals that have had a stroke because it has very specific language on there for that. The Go Talk Now case, that's by Attainment Company. Again, it's just an iPad, but they do have the Go Talk Now app, which if you're familiar with the Go Talks, they're really similar to the Quick Talkers that I talked about earlier, but they have an app version. And then again, just a regular old iPad too, that can have any app on it. So when it comes to the different apps, there are a ton of communication apps out there. So I just wanted to talk about a few of the more popular ones. Um, so when it comes to communication apps, there are symbol-based apps and then there are text-based apps. So symbol-based are going to have, they're going to be individual words more than likely, and they're going to have a word and a picture with it. So that one's kind of more like sentence building with that, or just using, you could just select individual phrases, but the idea is to eventually build to sentences. And then text-based, again, it's just a lot of them have a keyboard that you can just text phrases out, or Some will have like word prediction, or you can save like frequently used phrases. Something to keep in mind with these, if you have an individual that is using an AAC device, maybe they want to use it on their phone because they always have their phone with them. Um, it's going to be a lot easier to get something like a text-based app on their phone rather than a symbol-based, because with the text-based, you already have a keyboard on your phone and everything. It's meant to be kind of for that smaller size. Whereas the symbol based, like something like Layup has 84 buttons, and Touch Chat, it goes, I think, up to like 140 button options. That gets really, really small when you get to a phone size. So a lot of those won't even come up as an option to purchase on the phone. You can only get them on some kind of iPad or tablet. So that's something to keep in mind, especially if you're kind of like researching things and you're doing it on your phone. Those options won't come up whenever you're looking on your phone. So a little bit about access. Um, so when thinking about a lot of these, especially like the tablet-based devices, um, we need to think about, can the user select the options themselves with direct selection using their finger, or do they need some more support? So something like a key guard that helps define where those buttons are. Um, it it's not foolproof for somebody that might like lay their hand on the device because there's still, open spaces. You could still, kind of get different parts of your hand in there. But that does help prevent some of that. They also have different ones called touch guides that have a little bit more, um, I guess, coverage. And then there's just a small little hole with those buttons. So those are better for laying your hand on versus a key guard that has a little bit more open space. Um, Again, most of the Nova Chats, Pro Slates, Accents, and Via Pros come with key guards. And there's also companies that will make custom key guards, like they'll 3D print them for iPads with cases. So there's a lot of different options out there when it comes to key guards. For styluses, again, if somebody is having difficulty with that direct selection with their, finger, you can use something like a stylus that can help with that. Also think about switches. So there's switches like Bluetooth switches or switches with, you could use a switch with an interface on an iPad. Something to keep in mind with that is how you set up the switch access piece of it. So with using a switch, there is going to be a learning curve because either you're going to have to set it up with two switches and have one that will go through, all the grid different, the button options, and then one to select whenever you get to that option. Or you're going to have to set it up to do like auto scanning, but then you have to, kind of keep track of where the line is as it moves across the device and make sure that the user has a quick enough reflex to be able to press it whenever they want to select whenever that line gets to the button that they want. So that's just something to keep in mind with switch access. There are different ways to set that up. With head tracking, so with touch chat, I know with touch chat specifically, they have it built into their app. You don't need anything specific, any kind of specific equipment. I think as long as it does the most recent iOS update, it can probably do head tracking. With eye gaze, um, same thing. You can now use eye gaze on your iPad, or you can have a dedicated device that has eye gaze. I will say with eye gaze, if you use it on your iPad, um, it's pretty decent, especially this kind of being their first go around with it. But having a dedicated device is going to be more accurate when it comes to eye gaze. Okay, and then just some things to consider. Um, So a device or alternative options should always be accessible. So again, if you're going to the pool or water park or someplace where there's water, I get it. Technology and water does not mix. But they should still have some kind of alternate option, preferably a waterproof option that they can still have access to those words. Um, the device also needs to be routinely charged, or if it's device with batteries, have new batteries always kind of as a backup. The device is no good to anybody if it's not charged. Get a plan together of who's going to charge it. If you're working with a family, make sure that family plugs in the device. Just get in the habit of plugging it in every night, just like you do with your phone. So then it's always ready when it's needed the next day. These devices are not a one size fits all. So just because you have two individuals that both have autism, that does not mean that they both need the same device. It's very dependent on, user need and preference. So it's definitely not, you're not going to find one device that works for everybody or every group of people, every person in that group. And it also may not be their forever device. So needs change. Also, devices get discontinued too. So that's the unfortunate thing to think about. A lot of times with AAC devices, they really only have a lifespan about 5 years. So every 5 years, you're probably going to have to replace the device anyway. But also, reassessing, does this device still work for them? Is it still made? Is there something better out there that would better meet their needs? So just because you find a device and you're like, oh, this is perfect right now, and it might not be perfect here in a few years, or as things change. Devices also need to be maintained, updated, repaired, replaced. They should always be updated so it's running to the best of its function. Devices will start to slow down and you'll get to a point where it no longer updates too, which again, that comes with the needing to replace it too. Because at a certain point they will stop updating and then they will stop you just running effectively. You can also use a mix of anywhere from no tech to high tech options. Again, just because somebody has a high tech option doesn't mean they can't use a one button switch or a waterproof option like the Pixie Pal. They can have their main device, but then they can use other things too in certain situations. Something to keep in mind is it takes years to become a proficient AAC user. So even if you have that individual that can navigate anything, they know everything about the iPad, they know how to navigate it. We're still talking about an entire communication system here. It takes a while to figure out how to use that the best, how to find out where everything is. So it does take a while to become proficient. And then again, the goal is effective communication with or without the device. Okay, ways to avoid device abandonment. So again, this is an issue with all assistive technology, but especially with AAC. Make sure that you select the proper device and again, reassess as those needs change. As they get older, if they have a job and they change jobs, or their living situation changes, or their support system changes, just always reassess those needs and make sure if they stop using their device, maybe there's a reason why. Maybe it's not meeting their needs. So then you need to reassess that. Have it out within reach, especially and charged. I can't tell you the number of times I went into a school to work with a student on their AAC device, and I come in at 11 o'clock. They've been there for a few hours now, and where's the AAC device? Still in their backpack. So that doesn't help anybody. And also think about if they're somebody that uses a wheelchair or they just have a limited range of motion. Think about, do they need a mount that can, move their device a little bit closer to them so they have some easier access, because you want them to be able to, my next point, make the selections independently. We're kind of back at square one if somebody else has to select the buttons for them. So again, looking at different access options, if they need a switch or if they need to look at something like eye gaze, but they should be able to independently make those selections. Let the user explore their device. It can be kind of annoying when they're like repeatedly pressing buttons, or they're not, doesn't seem like they're intentionally like communicating anything. They're just kind of randomly pressing buttons. They're exploring, they need to figure out where everything is. Some of those, especially with the symbol-based apps, you can get like page within a page within a page. So it kind of takes a while to figure out where everything is at. So let them have that time to explore and then model. Model what you want to see. Model making selections, model building sentences, model finding where things are at. Um, because that's going to teach them how to use their device too. Um, Providing proper support for training and training for both the user and the family. With a lot of these devices, again, you can customize them. Like you can do so many things with them. Um, and you do want to customize them to where, it has the options and it's the best fit for the users. But that does take time to figure out how to do all of that. So providing training for both the user and the family to be able to do that. And then again, customizing the device to the user's needs and preferences. If they are a 30-year-old male using a device, do not select a young female voice for them. Select the voice that is most appropriate for them. Also let them have that option too. There are a ton of different voice options with a lot of these apps. So they should be involved in making those selections too. Same with, icons and frequently used phrases. Um, Something else to keep in mind, again, if they are a 30-year-old adult, they should have access to words like wine and beer. That that's just something we should all have, access. We all have access to those words. We're adults, over the age of 21. That's an option for us. So they should have those options on their device too. Same with cuss words. Again, if they're an adult and it's an appropriate setting, they should have access to those cuss words, because we as adults have access to be able to say cuss words when we choose. So again, teaching them when it's appropriate, when it's inappropriate to use those words, but they should still have those options on their device. Integrate the device into like a daily routine. So again, it can be very overwhelming to have this AAC device and feel like you have to use it all the time. So just pick one daily routine to start incorporating in. Maybe it's, dinner time, or maybe it's getting ready in the morning. Start there and then kind of build up. Again, do frequent updates. Make sure that you're maintaining the device, keeping it clean, keeping the gunk out of all the buttons, so that it's working to the best of its ability. And encourage social acceptance among family and peers. So nobody's going to want to use the device if they feel like weird and out of place. So talk with family, talk with friends about how it's just a normal device. It's just the way they communicate, and just make it socially acceptable. And then I wanted to end on this note. So just different ways that we can respect the AAC user. Assume competence. This goes for anybody with a disability using, any kind of assistive technology. Don't assume because they have a disability that that doesn't mean that they don't understand. Always assume competence. And along with that, involve them in the decision-making process, because they should be a part of it. Don't interrupt them. It does take a while. Goes along with allow wait time. It's going to take a while for them to make selections to build their sentence. Even if like if they start building their sentence and you know where it's going, don't interrupt them. Give them that wait time. Don't go have, a side conversation or go do something else. You wouldn't do that to somebody that you're talking verbally face to face with. So don't do it with an AAC user either. Make it fun, make it a conversation. It shouldn't be like okay, repeat what you want on your AAC device, or say it again, and just keep practicing. And it should be fun. It is a conversation. However way you practice, if you're talking about what you did over the weekend, telling jokes, it should be a fun process to learn. It shouldn't be stressful. Be aware again of prompting. So again, if you know where the conversation's going, they should have their ability to select what they want without somebody telling them. Always ask permission before using an individual's AAC device. Again, that is their personal device. It is their voice. It's very personal to them. So ask them before you go touching it, making changes to it. Uh, and then again, include them in those decisions too. Don't go picking voices for them, because that's going to be their voice. They are the ones that are stuck with it, have to use it all the time. So involve them in those decisions. And then don't forget about their peers. Conversation should not be with just the adults that are working with them or the therapist. It should be with other people that they are around um, and want to communicate with. So involve them too. All right, and that's all I have for you guys. You guys have any questions? Any thoughts? I don't know that I saw anything in the chat.
Okay, well, I will run through the rest of the slides while we see if any questions come in. You can feel free to put them in the chat, or you can raise your hand and I can go ahead and unmute you. But I'll move through the rest of the slides for now. So here is our schedule for the rest of the year for both the benefit series and the tech series. The next benefit series is going to be on May 14th, and it's going to be Know Your Rights on Medicare and Medicaid. And then our next technology series is going to be on May 28th on Under Your Nose Accessibility. So that's just going to be different accessibility options that are already built into devices. If you are looking for any of the resources that I talked about today, this is our website. It's lifecoursetools.com. And then here is both Kara and I's contact information. And I will go ahead and pull down the screen for just a second and toss in some of the registration links that we've talked about. All right, and then it doesn't look like we have any questions. So thank you, Kara, for presenting today. And thank you, everybody, for joining us. And we will see you next time.
Thanks, everybody.